Breaking news this Friday. Nova Scotians get the all clear after an emergency alert about shots fired, just days after 22 people were murdered. Tonight, the RCMP revealed the timeline of that rampage. Rent relief, Ottawa's new help for small businesses, the U.S. president's dangerous advice, what he suggested could cure the coronavirus, could actually kill people. Survivor's story.
I could feel the knives cutting through my lungs.
An Alberta woman tells us what COVID-19 did to her and the treatment that made her sick. And historic high note. You'll never Captain Tom Moore crescendos to another unlikely world record.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin with breaking news about a tense afternoon in Nova Scotia. RCMP scrambled to investigate new reports of shots fired. There were reports of two separate incidents in two neighbourhoods in the Halifax area. The RCMP responded. People were obviously on edge. An emergency alert was issued advising residents to shelter in place and refrain from travel until being advised otherwise. Police said they launched an extensive search of the areas and later did give the all clear. But all of this happened just before a virtual vigil began for the 22 people murdered by a gunman on the weekend. Ross Lord is with me from Halifax. Ross, I can't imagine the tension there and then the relief. What are police saying?
Well, at first, a warning went out to everyone in Nova Scotia saying stay inside after a report of shots fired in the Halifax suburb of Hammonds Plains. There were several other reports of shots fired, and the Mounties say in the end they were all unfounded. They were quick to sound the alarm this time after criticism they should have initiated an emergency alert last weekend that could have saved lives.
All right, thanks, Ross. We will come back to you in just a moment. There is already so much grief in Nova Scotia, and today people paid tribute to those who were murdered on the weekend. 22 innocent lives were taken in that gruesome rampage. Some of the victims were targeted, others were shot at random, and they are being remembered in a virtual vigil. That's Nova Scotia fiddler Natalie McMaster and a pianist playing in memory of Herbie McLeod, alongside a video of 17-year-old Emily Tuck in the middle there. She loved to play the violin. That video was recorded before she was killed. She was the youngest victim.
Sometimes the darkness can be brighter than sunshine.
All kinds of Nova Scotians took part, including country star George Canyon. He said, like others, he's devastated by the events of last weekend and is thinking of the families of the victims.
Hi, my name is Jonathan Torrens, and I've lived in Colchester County for 12 years. I'm a proud member of this community. As you can imagine, over the last several days, people here have been reeling, trying to make sense of something that just doesn't make sense.
There are still so many unanswered questions about what happened last weekend. Today, the RCMP did fill in some of the blanks. Ross takes us through that.
The Mounties repeat reporting by Global News that the rampage started after the gunman assaulted his girlfriend. She escaped and hid in the woods, emerging hours later with valuable information for police. In the meantime, he killed 13 people at or near Portapique Beach Road. The RCMP timeline shows at 9:35 Sunday morning, he was 60 kilometers away, killing 2 men and 1 woman and burning down a house in Wentworth. After knocking on a door in Glenholm, no one answered. The killer drove his fake police vehicle to another part of Wentworth.
Along the way, he encountered a woman who was out walking, and he shot the woman at the roadside.
He continued toward Debert.
A witness described that the suspect had pulled over one of the vehicles and had shot one of the drivers. He continued driving down that same road, Highway 4, and he encountered a second vehicle, and he shot and killed that victim at that location.
The gunman traveled south on Highway 102 towards Halifax, shooting Constable Chad Morrison, who mistook the gunman's vehicle for Constable Heidi Stevenson's. Morrison survived. Then came a head-on collision with Stevenson's vehicle.
Both vehicles collided head-on. Constable Stevenson engaged the gunman. The gunman took Constable Stevenson's life.
After fatally shooting a passerby and stealing a silver SUV, he stopped at the home of a woman, killed her, removed his police clothing, transferred his weapons to the victim's Mazda 3, then drove to the Irving Big Stop in Enfield.
While he's at the gas pumps, one of our tactical resources came to the gas station to refuel their vehicle. When the officer exited the vehicle, there was an encounter, and the gunman was shot and killed by police.
And Donna, we're learning more about the weapons the shooter used. Investigators say he had a handgun and he had long guns. They were able to trace one of those guns back to Canada. The remaining weapons they recovered are believed to have been obtained in the United States, and they're not saying anything about that cross-border investigation at this time.
Lots more to come on that. Ross, what do we know about why the RCMP did not initiate an emergency alert on the weekend, telling people a gunman was on the loose?
Well, we've suspected this all week as information's been dribbling out, but essentially they confirmed today that they thought they had the gunman contained in Portapique. A man told the Mounties he'd been shot by a man driving a car with police markings, that the car was headed towards Portapique Beach, and that there was only one way in and one way out.
All right, Ross Lord in Halifax, thank you. The rituals we rely on in times of grief have been altered because of the pandemic. Later, we'll show you some of the many other tributes to the victims as people find new ways to share their grief and support each other. Nova Scotians are also coping with the impact of COVID-19. Today, there was some positive news on that front. For the first time in 3 days, Nova Scotia did not record a death from the virus. Here's a snapshot of the country. There are more than 43,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Canada. More than 2,200 people are known to have died. Quebec has more than half the cases in Canada. More than 22,000 people have tested positive there. And the number of new cases in Ontario rose by 640 today. That's the highest daily increase so far. That province has more than 13,000 confirmed cases. The outbreaks are worst in long-term care homes. Today, Ontario's Premier appealed to the Prime Minister for more funding to help save lives of residents in long-term care homes. And Doug Ford applauded those workers who keep showing up and who are on the front line of the fight in Canada.
Nothing's a tougher job than what they're facing right now. Just imagine having a loved one, husband, wife, brother, sister, that has to go into this job every single day. They're absolute heroes.
Each day of public health restrictions pushes more businesses to the brink of bankruptcy. Today, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau gave a bit of a lifeline to some that are struggling to pay their rent. Mike Drolet explains.
Prohibition Gastro-House has been a staple on Toronto's trendy Queen Street for 13 years, but losing $30,000 a week was too much for owner Michael Summerfield to stomach.
Loans won't help us, deferrals won't help us, money is the only thing that's going to help. But is it just throwing good money after bad when you can't even put enough people in the restaurant to make money and pay your staff and pay your suppliers and pay the government?
His doors are now closed. The rent assistance program announced by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, too late to save his restaurant. But the plan works like this. The mortgaged commercial property owner has to first reduce rent for tenants by at least 75% to qualify for a forgivable loan. So the losses are shared. The tenant covers 25%, the property owner 25%, and the federal and provincial governments will pick up the remaining 50%.
This is an event that put us into deep freeze, put us into hibernation, as it were, and everyone had to stop and hold while we let this wave of COVID pass through.
The Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses is happy, but concerned with the fine print. Businesses have to be down 70% in revenues to qualify, and the CFIB predicts over 30% of businesses are losing too much to stay open, but not enough to get the assistance. And all of it hinges on the landlords themselves. They first have to agree to give tenants a break on their rent.
I would imagine that a landlord would rather have, 75% of the rent than none of the rent and an empty space. But it's still a bit of an open question and one that we're watching very, very carefully.
As will much of the country, because with over 90% of businesses considered small or medium, a lot is riding on this program. Mike Drolet, Global News, Toronto.
The World Health Organization is launching an initiative in the fight against COVID-19. World leaders have pledged to accelerate work on tests, drugs, and vaccines. They say they will share what they learn with all countries. The WHO's Director General says the only way to defeat COVID-19 is with a common approach. The U.S. has said it will not take part in that initiative, even though more people have died of COVID-19 in the United States than in any other country. More than 50,000 people, and they're still dying. Yesterday, President Trump put out some dangerous ideas for possible treatments. He said UV light on the skin and disinfectants like bleach might work. Here's part of what he said.
Right, and then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning? Because you see it gets on the lungs and it does a tremendous number of the lungs. So it'd be interesting to check that. So that you're going to have to use medical doctors with. But it sounds interesting to me.
In fact, disinfectants are poisonous. Injecting or drinking them will kill you. As Jackson Proskow reports, there's lots of bad advice, misinformation, and false hope out there, and people like the governor of Georgia are acting on it.
They're back in business in Georgia, where the governor defied health experts and let barbershops, gyms, and beauty salons reopen.
It is a scary time to be opening back up.
The state has 22,000 active cases, adding hundreds more each day. But by Monday, theaters can reopen and restaurants can resume dine-in service.
Who's coming to dinner? I just don't think there are that many people right now who are willing.
Canadian chef Hugh Atchison says he won't be opening the doors of his 3 Georgia restaurants.
I'm totally not prepared to jump right back in without really clear set of guidelines, scientific data backing it up that it's safer.
That battle between science and politics is playing out across the U.S.
I was asking a question sarcastically to reporters like you.
In Washington, President Donald Trump tried to back away from his own comments about injecting disinfectants into the body as a treatment.
But you were asking your medical experts to look into it. Were you being sarcastic with them?
To look into whether or not sun and disinfectant on the hands.
That's not what he said Thursday.
I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning?
Health officials are seriously worried Trump's words will get someone killed. In less than 24 hours, a Maryland coronavirus hotline received more than 100 calls about consuming disinfectant. The makers of Lysol felt compelled to issue a statement. Under no circumstance should our disinfectant products be administered into the human body. And now the U.S. Food and Drug Administration is cautioning against the use of hydroxychloroquine, a drug touted by the president. Studies into a second drug pushed by Trump have also been called off after nearly 24 patients died. Donna?
Jackson Proskow in Washington, thanks. An Alberta woman with COVID-19 says she was treated with the drug President Trump has talked about. Judy Gabriel was critically ill and she was given hydroxychloroquine. It's been around for decades. It's used to treat malaria as well as some autoimmune diseases. There is no evidence, though, it's effective as a treatment for COVID-19. As Heather Yourex-West reports, Gabriel is recovering now, but she's still struggling with symptoms.
Not easy. Filmmaker Judy Gabriel shot this video a little more than a month ago. The Alberta woman was in hospital battling COVID-19.
It was a weird sensation because you're feeling like you're going to black out and lose it, like you feel like you're going to die.
Gabriel says by the time she shot these, she was actually on the mend, recovering after doctors took a chance and decided to try treating Gabriel with hydroxychloroquine, an anti-malarial that is currently being studied as a possible treatment for COVID-19.
I remember just looking over and saying, I'm a bit scared, but I was just trying to breathe.
Gabriel doesn't know how she became infected with the new coronavirus. She had been living in Lloydminster when she developed a cough in late February, but she wasn't tested for COVID-19 for nearly a month.
By that time, my fever, my headache, the pain in my chest was getting worse.
As Gabriel struggled to breathe, she says it became difficult to think straight. It's why worried friends enlisted the help of a retired doctor who lived nearby.
I had to say, look, if you don't call 911, I will call 911. So that's kind of what I did. And the most important factor was she was living alone.
Gabriel believes she was the first COVID-19 patient to be treated at Lloydminster Hospital. Within days of receiving hydroxychloroquine and another antibiotic, she says her condition improved. But the medications caused side effects too: nausea, hives, blurred vision, and chest pain. Nearly a month later, Gabriel is still a long way from feeling well.
My chest and back are sore. They hurt. Breathing is still, I cough when I overbreathe, but I got to push myself to kind of get better. That's what you do.
She'd also like to know if she still has COVID-19. She hasn't been retested, so she remains isolated at home, taking each day as it comes. Heather, Yourex-West, Global News, Calgary.
Coming up, what COVID-19 is doing inside Canada's prisons. Canada's correctional facilities are another hotbed for COVID-19 outbreaks. There are more than 190 confirmed cases of COVID-19 among federal prisoners, and one inmate has died. As Abigail Beeman reports, the virus is creating tension.
That's the sound of upset inmates at the Saskatchewan Penitentiary who say they were locked in the yard in the cold.
They leave us outside in the middle of a flu pandemic.
The recording obtained by Global News is just one example of increased tensions behind bars due to COVID-19. No violence in that case, but riots are something everyone worries about.
And is there fears of uprising? Absolutely, there's fears, but our members are weighing those risks on a daily basis.
There have been nearly 400 cases of COVID-19 among inmates and staff at provincial and federal institutions.
The coronavirus can spread like wildfire behind prison walls, and then it spills out into our communities.
The numbers come from the University of Ottawa's Justin Trudeau. He says most provinces have moved in the right direction by releasing, in total, more than 3,000 inmates who are awaiting trial out on bail, like Shane Morin.
Better for the safety of other people in there because it's a small environment.
When he showed symptoms, Morin went into quarantine at the Saskatoon Correctional Centre, only allowed out of his cell every 2 days to shower. He says his test came back negative and he's healthy now.
Everyone was worried. Yeah, I was worried. I was scared, right? It's a very dirty place, right? It's not too clean, but you just got to remain your hygiene, keep everything in order. And they have cleaners and stuff in there that spray things down, but I don't know, it's also pretty scary, right? If one person comes in there, it's just going to spread, right?
But there is no clear evidence of an increase in releases at the federal level, where there are more cases and more serious sentences being served.
These are all provincial governments headed by conservative leaning parties. And meanwhile, and unfortunately, the federal government has kind of been stuck in the mud.
The public safety minister said he was concerned a month ago.
There's a number of things being examined to address the what we believe to be a fairly significant risk.
The head of the Canadian Police Association told the Parliamentary Health Committee he's concerned too, but about early releases.
Has the potential to add unnecessary stress to an already overburdened system.
The head of the Correctional Officers Union says overall the response has been reactive when it should be proactive. The bottom line from Ottawa, they're working on solutions. But behind bars, the virus moves much faster than government decision making. Abigail Beeman, Global News, Ottawa.
Ahead, Captain Tom Moore tops his fundraising goal and tops the charts. It seems there's no stopping Captain Tom Moore. He's the 99-year-old veteran who's raised nearly £30 million now for Britain's National Health Service by walking in his garden. And now he's broken another record with a song.
Walk on, walk on.
He's featured in this cover version of You'll Never Walk Alone, and it just hit #1 in the UK. That makes Moore the oldest person to reach #1. He bumped The Weeknd out of the top spot, incidentally. Over 82,000 copies of Moore's song have been sold, and all the proceeds are going to Britain's National Health Service. Nova Scotia remembers, next honouring the lives lost. The grief over the murders in Nova Scotia is most profound for those who lost loved ones. But they're not alone. People across the country and all over the world are horrified by what happened. Many have friends and family in Nova Scotia, and if they could, they'd wrap their arms around that whole province. We leave you tonight with some tributes. Thanks for watching.
Break, attention! To the front, salute!
This weekend will be hard on all families. Take your time, feel your pain, reach out if you need it, and know that we are there with you.
It's hope. We're trying to offer hope to people who have lost so much.
Let's come together to support these communities who suffered immeasurable loss. Let's celebrate the lives of those who left us too soon.
And I just want to say to my Nova Scotia family and to my RCMP family, know that I'm heaving a sigh and a wish for thee, and will mourn with you from afar.
So farewell to Nova Scotia, your sea-bound coast, to your mountains dark, to your hills